there's a lot that continues to be going on with this Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively lawsuit. And there's a lot I need to talk about. But for this video, I'm going to go over something that I keep seeing in not only my comments, but in other people's comments as well. And I want to touch just kind of on this point briefly. There's a lot I want to talk about in regards to this lawsuit, and I do want to bring some more receipts and facts and whatnot. For me, it's very difficult dealing with a chronic illness and trying to, also make these videos at the same time. I've also got a lot going on with doctor's appointments and whatnot. It's exhausting. And just to be clear, I don't think I quite have enough of the energy to be able to put into like this exhaustive investigative journalist style presenting of the facts and the receipts on this channel. I definitely want to point you into the direction of the channels that are doing that, because I am basing my viewpoints off the facts, but it's too much for me to bring them all up and to prove everything. I am more of an intuitive analyst rather than a facts-based analyst. I'm more interested in the abstract concepts and themes, as well as learning about narcissism through these real-world things. I don't desire to be a lawyer or an investigative journalist. I'd rather just philosophize about it with you, and then you guys can look up the facts for yourself. And maybe at some point I'll go into a video where I just pull out all of the facts. They're there. I definitely am going to start linking some videos that I feel are very exhaustive and have incredible investigative journalist value. That way you know some of the things that I am consuming that I'm basing my opinion on. Anyways, one of the things that is really bugging me, people keep saying, okay, yeah, Blake Lively has done all these things, but why did Justin Baldoni have such bad boundaries? He was such a bad boss. He didn't have balls. That's one thing I read a comment is he didn't have balls to, present his own boundaries. And I think that is just so unfair. It's so unfair. You have to recognize there is an aspect of men can't win with women. And I'll explain why. When men deviate from the traditional mindset of ruling with this oppressive power dynamic, from their more traditional roles of these patriarchal roles exhibiting these toxic masculinity traits, instead of praising that and praising a leadership style from a man that is more collaborative, a leadership style that is, more humble and really, lifts women up in their opinions and their contributions, like he was trying to do with this movie. We tell them that they don't have balls when they're actually learning to lead with a healthy masculinity instead of a toxic masculinity. Not to mention, going back to the narcissistic abuse aspect, this is completely ignoring all the ways that she love-bombed him and got him into this whole situation where he had to constantly placate her, as well as, the fact that he was trying to not let this movie tank and he needed his leading lady to be happy. I mean, we know things like this happen in Hollywood. These actors, they have big egos, and I'm sure a lot of different directors have to, especially new ones, since he's a new one, they have to placate these actors who have giant egos. What really bugs me is also from just a narcissistic abuse standpoint, considering how men are narcissistic abuse victims as well, that we literally victim blame men for being victims because they don't have enough balls and they're just not man enough, which is ironically, no pun intended, the name of his podcast. I can't remember exactly the name of it. It was I'm Man Enough or Not Man Enough or something like that. But it's just so interesting looking at the stigmas of being a victim and how in some ways that is even more difficult for men. I'm not trying to get into debate in terms of who is victimized more. I think generally women are more so, but when men are victims, it's even harder for them to get past those stigmas because of the toxic masculine expectation and standard. I don't know why, especially being a first-time director, this little fish, still not a big name in Hollywood. I mean, we saw him on Jane the Virgin, but other than that, you know, compared to the stardom of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, you know, he's still a little guy. I understand why he was placating her so much and being so diplomatic with her. If you listen to the audio that came out recently, where he was actually responding in an audio to the infamous Khaleesi text, he was so patient. I mean, just, and it was crazy to me. What's crazy to me as well is there is a psychologist who responds to that, and maybe I'll go into that in my next video, but she was basically saying that he was gaslighting her. I understand why people would listen to his voice and get suspicious, because he is incredibly charming and well-spoken. And the thing is that a lot of times narcissists can come across as incredibly charming and well-spoken. But we have to remember that just because someone is charming and well-spoken doesn't mean they're necessarily a narcissist. Have we forgotten that really incredible, charming people exist? I get that he comes across a little smooth. I can see why people would be a little bit skeptical about that. But what I hear in that voice note is a man who is, yes, he's being diplomatic. I don't think that that voice note was reflecting his real feelings. Like, obviously, he's trying to save the movie. Like, he's trying to make everyone happy. That doesn't, just because, and this is another thing that drives me crazy, is we keep seeing, like, you know, people trying to, like, read his body language and say, oh, look, he's being deceptive there. And, like, yeah, he doesn't mean what he's saying. Obviously, because, like, he was dealing with a nightmare of a person on set, and yet he was still trying not to talk bad about his co-star because he wanted his movie to do well. What I don't understand is that why we expect victims to be so perfect. And from what I've seen, especially like the receipts that have been coming out recently, this man has so much integrity and emotional maturity. The more I see, the more that it just exonerates him in my mind. He dealt with that like a freaking class act. Like, I don't think I'd be able to be that classy. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not even gonna lie. And yet, he is still getting all these accusations. And I have some videos I need to do, because I have seen some stuff lately that has just blown my mind with its dishonesty talking about this lawsuit. Like, someone put me on to ex-patriarch. At first, I was like, you know what? I see some of his points. I could understand why someone would see things like that. But then the more I watched his content, the more dishonest it appeared to me. We got to go into that in another video, but it was certainly just a frustrating watch for me, for sure. I think it's unfair of us when we're looking at all these people's body language and say, look, he's being dishonest. He doesn't really believe what he's saying. You know, and a lot of these body language experts, they do have a lot of integrity. They, explain themselves really well when it comes to, like, well, this may not necessarily mean what you think it means. But what I don't like is that we expect people to have like 100%, especially victims, to have like 100% honesty. Like, even the nicest people, even like the most amazing people in the world are not going to go through the world with 100% honesty, in the sense that they're just wearing all of their emotions on their sleeves 100% of the time. While I'm not religious anymore, I used to be, that's a whole nother story for another time, there are some beneficial, spiritually beneficial points in the Bible. One of them being to be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. And that's the way that I'm beginning to see Justin Baldoni. Yes, at first it appeared that he didn't have balls, he didn't have a spine. It was just him trying to have a collaborative work environment, and I almost feel like he's a lot of victims and also empaths and empathic people who one of the things I think is so beautiful about him is that he recognizes the pain that men have caused to women. And you can see that one of the reasons he's so apologetic is because he carries that. I sense that from what I've seen about him and things that I've heard him say. He carries that responsibility. And so in the way that he interacted with Blake Lively at first, yes, do I think he was placating her? Yes. But at the same time, I also think that he feels a sense of guilt, even the way that he was speaking to his wife. I just feel like he's one of those empaths who feels a sense of guilt for, you know, being a man, being the member of the sex that has often subjugated the other. And of course, I don't think that men should feel guilty just for being men, but he recognizes the same way that like white people feel guilt, you know, as well, for being white and like what their ancestors have done to people of color, you know. And we can get into like a whole debate on whether or not that's a good thing or not. But I think that it's beautiful for him that he recognizes that. He carries the responsibility of being a man and what other men have done to other women, and he wants to make up for that. He's essentially has this attitude, at least from what I've seen, of wanting to pay for their sins. And in the sense, lifting women up and letting them take, you know, the platform and take the mic. And he wants to give, you know, the power imbalance that has been going on for centuries a chance to equalize itself. And that's one of the reasons why it is so frustrating and so upsetting that a woman would take advantage of that when that is men who are like that are literally so rare, like a diamond. And the ones that do exist often aren't in leadership positions or in places like Hollywood where they are big stars or, you know, big producers or directors who have a lot of power. Because let's be honest, when it comes to hierarchical systems, the more narcissistic you are, especially as a man, the better you do in these hierarchical systems. Yet here's a man who comes in with a different paradigm that he's trying to pioneer in the world, and especially in this patriarchal existence of Hollywood and that the power dynamics there. He's trying to bring something healthy, a healthy masculinity and a healthy way of being leadership into that environment. Very first thing that happens, it's exploited. And I think that's one of the reasons why these types of leaderships don't often exist, even not considering gender. The moment that people show weakness, the narcissists of the world just descend. While I still think that there is evidence for Blake Lively having an emotion, having some feelings of some sort toward Justin Baldoni, we definitely know for a fact, it's been proven at this point, that she tried to take over the film. This is what's so difficult about living in a world where the biggest narcissist survives and does well, and those who try to live and you know, climb the ladder with an empathic mindset end up just getting destroyed by everyone else. And that's the paradigm that I think needs to change. I've been thinking about a lot about these things in the last few days, and I've realized a lot of it comes down to this just racist, misogynist, patriarchal hierarchy system. And I'm beginning to feel like it could be like the root cause of all the evil in the world. And I just don't want it to win. I just don't want it to win. And sometimes, like I said in my last video, what appears to be the case, the opposite is true. Justin Baldoni may be a man, but he is not an agent of the patriarchy. Blake Lively is. And as women, as much as we want to be like, yeah, go women, absolutely go women, take those leadership roles, do your thing, girl. we still need healthy masculine men to also be in positions of leadership. And if we ourselves are going to contribute to the judgment of, he just wasn't man enough, he didn't have balls, he didn't set enough boundaries, sure, he could have worked on his boundary setting a little. But in the circumstances, like I said, it makes perfect sense. Does he want all of the people who are working on this movie to lose their jobs? He knew that he had to play a little bit of the game. It's not fair to expect people to just be completely vulnerable in the world and to not have any sense of diplomacy where they have to maybe act a little different than they feel, and then somehow saying, oh, that's evidence that he's a snake. He's a snake. He didn't mean what he said, because he was upset inside but still tried to praise his co-star. As if that's like a bad thing. Yeah, being like fully honest is the best way to operate in the world, but if we do, we get destroyed. Like, it's the irony of like, he just should have been man enough and he should have bigger balls, is on two levels. We tell them that you're not narcissistic enough to survive in this world. Man up, right? Yet when they do, we tell them they're dishonest snakes. So, and misogynistic and violent creatures. True for most men, not gonna lie. But you can see how it's kind of a lose-lose situation for men here. When it comes to victims showing a little bit of duplicitousness in the sense that they're not sharing everything that they're feeling, and they're, trying to be diplomatic and they're trying to placate a situation. We're like, look, liar, horrible person. Are you so honest in the world that you tell everything that you feel all the time? Like, that would be stupid, right? Like, you would not get anywhere in society if you did not conceal some of how you felt sometimes. So Justin Baldoni, like many victims, can't win. Anyways, that's what I wanted to say today. I'm really tired, so I hope it came out all right. There's gonna be more videos coming, and I want to discuss certain things in a bit more detail and provide some more facts. I just really need some rest.